So get this, Paul Manafort's trial in Washington, D.C. has been postponed. It was supposed to start September 17th, and jury selection will still begin then, but the opening statements have been pushed back until September 24th. The judge in the case made the ruling after the former Trump campaign chairman's attorneys argued they needed more time to go through the more than 1,000 pieces of evidence the government wants to introduce at trial. Now, this time, Manafort is facing charges of acting as an unregistered foreign agent. It will happen about a month after a jury in Virginia convicted him on 8 felony counts, including bank fraud. President Trump called the jury's decision a disgrace. Now, while the president continues calling the Russia investigation a witch hunt, an op-ed in the Washington Post says it's not. Washington Post columnist Karen Tumulty wrote that piece and joins us now from Washington to talk about what she wrote. Karen, great to chat with you. And we should note that, your headline was really that Manafort lost, Mueller won. What would the implications have been if Mueller didn't win this case, which we know was far from actuality because there was only actually one holdout juror that wouldn't convict on the other counts? But what was your point?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember that this, as the White House points out, was not a case that dealt with Paul Manafort's work during the time he was associated with the Trump campaign. And in fact, the judge had gone so far as to forbid anyone from mentioning Trump or Russia collusion during this trial. But the fact is, the verdict was such a vindication for Robert Mueller, his investigative techniques, the thoroughness by which he had pursued the investigation. And had it gone otherwise, it really would have given a lot of credence not only to President Trump's charges that all of this is a witch hunt, but also potentially to calls by Republicans that Robert Mueller wrap this investigation up quickly, and even potentially for the president having a pretext to fire Bob Mueller.
What's interesting as well is that it appears what you're saying is the lines have really been drawn here. The special counsel has 3 times as much evidence for its next trial against Manafort, while President Trump has been saying how much he respects Manafort and how this decision and this whole investigation is a witch hunt and a hoax. What do you think happens next here?
Well, in this particular trial, because it deals with Paul Manafort's, the allegation being that he was unregistered as a foreign agent, there is potential for it to actually come closer to the work that he was doing while he was with the Trump campaign, and also to touching the Russia investigation itself. But what you also see here is that other people who Mueller might want to be talking to, whose testimony he might desire at this point, are going to feel a lot of pressure as they see what Paul Manafort is going through here. No one is going to want to be in Mueller's crosshairs.
Now, I want to ask you about the other major topic on everyone's minds in Washington this week, the passing of Senator John McCain. You also wrote the obituary in the Washington Post for Senator McCain over the weekend and said that you actually began putting it together before we even knew he had brain cancer. Tell me about that and what the process was like just in the past year finalizing this.
Sure. Newspapers really do have to have, for figures of as much importance as Senator McCain, we do have to have something ready in case the inevitable that is going to claim all of us happens. So I had actually begun working on this obituary of Senator McCain probably 3 years ago. And you would think that writing somebody's obituary is sort of a dismal job. But the fact is, if you're doing it, as I was in this case, while Senator McCain was not only alive, but still vigorous, still writing his own story, it was actually sort of a joy to be able to sort of stand back and take stock of his life.
And I have to say, even just watching people share their memories of the late senator has been quite enjoyable, seeing some of his more humorous moments as well. You included some interesting anecdotes, many of which I'd never heard, one being that McCain used to hold his breath as a child until he passed out when throwing tantrums. Apparently those tantrums never ended. What more can you tell us about that and how you discovered it?
his mother, who, by the way, is still with us at the age of 106, would get so alarmed because he would hold his breath as a toddler until he would black out. So she finally consulted a Navy doctor who said the next time that kid does it, take him fully clothed and just dump him in a bathtub full of icy water. So that's what she did to try to control his temper tantrums. But it was sort of an early manifestation of the personality that we saw, because the fact is that Senator McCain, in many cases, it did seem that he was sometimes his truest self when he was outraged at something. He was, as his longtime aide, Mark Salter, said, always, looking for the next fight.
In a letter laying out his final thoughts, Senator McCain said that he lived and died a proud American. I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on his farewell statement, and if you think it really fit with his maverick persona.
The fact is that patriotism and service to our country was something that was literally in his DNA. Senator McCain had one ancestor who had actually fought with George Washington in the Revolutionary War. His father and his grandfather, he was John Sidney McCain III. His father and grandfather were the first father-son ever to have made 4-star admirals in the Navy. So this idea of service to our country is something that really was part of his destiny from the moment he was born, and certainly something that guided him throughout his life. And I think we're also seeing the passing of a generation where it was expected that our national leaders would have had some kind of wartime military service early in their lives.
Yeah, and we've been talking today just how Senator McCain perhaps represents the old Republican Party. President Trump is the present, and you only really realize what you have when you lose it. But great to chat with you about your work. Karen Tumulty, joining us from Washington. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.